All right, so we are going to open up to the next available page in our composition notebook, which is after our onomatopoeia page. And we are going to set up a couple pages today, just before we start reading a book, our first book. So our first page that we have in our composition notebook available, we are going to title up at the top, capital R, period, capital A, period, capital C, period, and capital E, period, answers. Race answers. Now this page is going to have a little image that you were given in your packet for Fish in a Tree. And this is going to be glued, the whole back side of this is going to be glued and put onto the top half of the page right underneath your title. We are going to then add an example underneath so that you know how race answers work. So race answers, race is just an acronym here that can help you to answer a question. A lot of the times in reading class or a comprehension question, you will have different parts of an answer that should be included or that help the person looking at your answer really understand that you know what's going on in the question, in the problem, that kind of a thing. So down below, we are going to write an example. And the example that we're going to write down underneath is actually going to be a question from the book that we're about to start here shortly, called Fish in a Tree. So I'm going to write down an example question, pretend like you were getting this question on a worksheet or in a Google form or in a quiz or a test. And the question would be, which of Allie's classmates shows bravery in chapter 2? So if you were given a question like this in an assessment, and you were to use race answers to explain or to answer the question, you would first start off by thinking of the word R in the race acronym. So R means to reword the question. So I'm going to start my answer off by rewording the question in the first part of my answer. So I would say, Allie's classmate, and then I will actually answer the question here quickly, just because that's how it's going to make the best sense to reword this question and answer the question at the same time. Allie's classmate, Keisha, shows bravery in chapter 2. Okay, so here I'm going to pause. My answer isn't done yet. My sentence isn't even done yet. But I now answered the question. I stated which character, which of Allie's classmates. So I stated my answer here, but I also reworded my question at the same time. Allie's classmate Keisha shows bravery in chapter 2 is almost identical to the question, but it's answering the question. So if you weren't given the question, and if that was covered up, and you were just given the answer, you would know exactly what the question is, and you would know exactly where to find it, and what the question itself is asking as well. Okay, so Allie's classmate Keisha shows bravery in chapter 2. So now I actually have the first part of race done. I reworded the question, and I already answered the question. Keisha is the main word that is being looked for in this question, or in this answer. So I have R and A done. Now C is to cite evidence from the text. I stated that in chapter 2 is where all of this takes place, but now I'm going to give an example as to where in chapter 2, or what that specific example is in chapter 2. So I already have Allie's classmate Keisha shows bravery in chapter 2 by asking Shay, who is another character in the book, to mind her own business. And I'm going to put a period there, and I'm going to end my sentence there. So now I will actually show you part of the text. Oops, sorry. Part of the text where this happens. So right here it says, Keisha steps up to Shay and says, "Why don't you mind your own business for once?" Now, I did not write the exact quote down in my answer here. You could have, and that would be totally fine. In some places or some questions may ask you to write that entire quote down. But I just kind of summarized it here to answer the question kind of in a more general term and to show evidence from the text. Okay, evidence from the text always helps back up your answer. It always helps give your reader of the question or the book or someone just interested in your answer a place to go back and look to double check if they want to learn more. Okay, now E is the last part of the acronym. Explain why that's important. So Allie's classmate Keisha shows bravery in chapter 2 by asking Shay to mind her own business. Shay, now I'm explaining why she was minding or asking Shay to mind her own business and why that's important. Shay was saying rude comments to Allie. Okay, I could even keep this all as one sentence and add the word because in the middle of business and Shay. Allie's classmate Keisha shows bravery in chapter 2 by asking Shay to mind her own business because Shay was saying rude comments to Allie. You could do it that way, or you could keep it the way that we have it in 2 small sentences. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just actually going to label each part here. And I'm going to say R is above that part here, and then throughout the rest of it too. But at least I have it in the text or in my answer. A is here because I'm answering the question. Chapter 2 is part of C, citing evidence from the text. And then I also have the quote or the summarized quote here as part of the text as well. So I kind of have 2 different parts of C, citing evidence from the text, and then explain why that's important would be the rest of this sentence here. Now, when you're answering questions in this class, I am going to have you use the RACE format or use your RACE answers. You will hear me say a lot. I do not expect that you go back and label with your little R, A, C, and E in the question, but I do want you to refer back to this picture here, and you'll notice this picture is a picture of the door in the classroom. So whether you're at home or in person, you have the same posters available to you to look at when you're answering questions in a Google form or on a worksheet. So please copy this down. This is all we're going to put on this page is the picture and then the example question and the example answer. And we will then move on to the next page. So the next page is going to start our first book that we're going to be reading in this class. And our first book is going to be Fish in a Tree. Fish in a Tree. This is one of my all-time favorite books. I love it. It's one of my favorites. I'm so excited for you guys to read it if you haven't read it already. So the next page in your packet that you were given is the book cover or a picture of the book cover. You are going to cut this out and glue this all the way down into this page. I like to start off a new book that we're reading in class. And then that section in our composition of book with the book cover, just so that we remember what the book looked like and that may trigger what you read about and what you remember from reading the book. Okay, then I'm going to glue the whole thing down in the back. Okay, so that is done. That is all we're doing on this page. We're just putting on the book cover so we know that this next section and the couple pages that follow will be dedicated to Fish in a Tree. Now turn to the next page, and you are going to now title up at the top, Fish in a Tree Prediction. Fish in a Tree Prediction. Now this page is going to be, pages similar to this will be done with each book that we read. We are going to dedicate one whole page right after the cover page in our composition notebook for predicting what's going to happen. Now, that may be that you are just writing words that you see, or that you are thinking about what could be happening in the story. This may be a place where you draw pictures of things that you're predicting to happen in the story. Now, you may come across some novels that we read in this class that you've already read, and if that's the case, that's totally fine, especially for this prediction page. Since you've already read it, you can't really predict what's going to happen. But maybe think back to when you read it and really important parts that you remember from the book or important scenes from the book, or maybe look at the book cover. What does that book cover kind of help jog your memory with, or even predict for you? Now, looking at the book cover and the title of the book, I can probably draw a fish, or if you are a writer, not a drawer like me, you can just write the word fish. Okay, something with a fish is most likely going to happen just because it's called Fish in a Tree. So I'm probably then going to draw a tree. And I'm not the best artist, so don't feel like you have to be perfect with this either. But then I see a lot of colors on the cover too. Pink and blue and yellow and green and purple. So maybe it has to do with some sort of like spectrum or rainbow or spectrum. There's a lot of like geometric shapes too. I see the triangle, which is the word A in the cover. I'll show you here on my book. For some reason, you're probably going to laugh at me, this kind of reminds me of a piece of cheese. Not sure why, but maybe that's what I'm predicting. So I might write cheese on there. Now, I could be totally wrong. I could be totally right. I have no idea. Okay, so fish in a tree. That's about all for my predictions. Maybe you have totally different ones. Maybe think about the color of the front cover, the colors that are used in the image. Think about what fish in a tree symbolizes. I don't think I've ever seen a fish in a tree or fish and trees combined with each other. So maybe I know that it's not possible. It's not going to happen. Put that down for your prediction. Okay. All right. So that is all that we're going to do with setting up this composition notebook for Fish in a Tree so far. You have a packet, but we are going to be working on that packet throughout the rest of the unit. So please set that aside in a safe spot. And then the next video on this assignment will be reading chapters 1 and 2.